It's the Movie Crypt.
And welcome to another edition of the Movie Crypt. I'm Adam Green.
I'm Joe Lynch.
And we are recording this episode 415.
Holy crap.
On Friday, April 16th, 2021, with our special guest, Miss Debbie Rochon. Like we've been saying a lot lately, a long time coming for sure. But as you guys know, if you've listened to this podcast for 8 years, which by the way, last week was our 8-year anniversary of doing this show.
Oh my God.
8 years.
How the fuck have we done that?
I don't know. 8 years without ever missing a Monday. And, you know, there is a Hollywood therapy question that we keep kind of skipping every week just because it's not the right question for whoever the guest is that we have. So we're just going to answer that right now because it's not a long answer. But the question is, any advice for new podcasters and people just launching a podcast now? The best advice that we can give is consistency. That's the biggest thing. If you want people to listen to your show, then make it appointment listening and always put it out when you say you're going to put it out. Sometimes you see podcasts which they'll put out an episode, 1 week, and then it could be 2 months before there's another one. Then they'll put it out consistently, every couple days, and then it's gone again. So pick a schedule that you can feasibly do. Why we picked weekly? Well, that was because it was supposed to tie in.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be a limited series, if you will, and then we got picked up. We picked ourselves up.
Yeah.
Or Geek Nation did, and we've been doing it ever since. And usually there's always a point. I mean, it's not like it happens often, but there's always a point where we kind of look at each other and go, like, should we keep going? Like, and being the weird ADD people that we are, it's always got to be an even number. It's like, all right, 200. I think it's time to call it quits. 300. Okay, I think we've exhausted all of our friends. 400. Holy shit. Yeah. And now, like, I mean, we haven't even. We were just discussing how the past 15 episodes up until now have been, like, personally, like, some of the best episodes we've had, despite the fact that we've still had to do it on Zoom, save for one episode, which was the Darren Bousman one.
Yeah.
But it's these conversations that we've always talked about, like, as a joke in the past, where we would always do it on a Friday. Because usually during the week we get our asses handed to us, and then on Friday we hang out with someone who has usually been through the ringer like us, and then we go, you know what? Yeah, maybe we shouldn't quit this whole fucking thing. And that's not just for the podcast; that's for filmmaking.
Yeah,
and and our slogan of "Never Give Up" has been following us ever since, and it's been such a wonderful ride with you, with all the people that have been supporting us, especially on Patreon. And yeah, I mean, it's these conversations that keep us going, which has been great.
Everyone and their mother has a podcast now. They're like Facebook pages or Twitter accounts. So be you. And remember at one point when we got self-conscious about how often I say and how often you say and we actively started trying not to. And then the whole thing sounded like it was scripted.
Yeah.
It sounded like it wasn't a real conversation. So that's how we speak, and that's what you get. But just be you and your point of view on things. These days, you do have to be careful, even if you're joking.
I was going to say, and or one thing. There's other elements we have to be a little more careful of.
But you would hope that people, especially at this point, know your character and know, okay, obviously they were kidding when they said that, or they didn't mean it that way, but it doesn't.
You take one thing out of context, and it happens all the time. Like, there are established podcasters or people who put themselves online, like Mark Maron or even Kevin Smith, and when you take them out and you don't know any of their sensibilities, you can easily trigger someone, and I'm sure there's 414, no, maybe 15 with this episode, 415 ways that you could probably cancel one, if not both of us, if you went back and took something out of context. So
yeah, has anyone, we've never talked about this, has anyone in your professional life ever said to you, like, just stop doing the podcast, it's an unnecessary risk, why are you doing it? All you need is to say one thing.
My manager once, when we first started, just because, like, at the time I was trying to juggle this and like I had a big conundrum over leaving for Mayhem, because with Everly, we had just started it, and then I left, and that was also when we were not sure how long we were going to do it. By the time we did Mayhem 3 years later, the show was established. So and we were just trying to figure out, like, what do we do? Are we banking stuff? Like, is that going to be the same thing? Like, I would have to do the check-ins and stuff like that. And I remember him going, is it worth it? And yeah, it fucking is, man. Like, it really is worth it. Not just for you guys, but just for us. And even just to have that way to have, I'm not going to say the word, but the T word, that has become kind of this show for us as well. It would be nice, though, if Patreon if there was more there, because then to be able to hire somebody to the stuff I do, the editing the episodes, the posting them, because each one's got to be posted 3 separate ways, 3 separate places, but like it's a lot of hours of work. So it would be nice to have somebody else do that, and all we do is the show. That would be really nice someday
to get to that point. But I mean, 8 years in, I don't think that day's coming, but we'll see. So yeah, it is a struggle, and so go easy on yourself with how you get it set up. Do a schedule that you can keep to. Our problem is because of the whole, we've never missed a Monday. Now, because we're the way we are, we can't miss a Monday. And so, oh wow, we're both going to be in production through these months. We got to record them in advance. One of us has to do this or that. So it is hard. But again, the community, the friends that we've made, that's the best answer. Both of us would miss it if it was gone. It would feel like a part of life is missing, I guess. And so that's the real reason to keep going, because it's certainly not for the money. It doesn't do anything, I don't think, for our careers. If anything, it hurts them, because think about how many people in the industry look to us as media now. Oh, how do I get on your show? I got something.
Even our peers who would like, oh, this is Adam and Joe. They're podcasters. We're like, dude, what the fuck?
It'll also teach you a few things about your peers, because when you have something coming out, not a peep from anybody, but then when they have something coming out, like, hey, can I come on the show? Can I come on the show? Can I have access to that audience that you work so hard to build? But yeah, have fun with it. Be you, but have a schedule. Stick to that schedule, and just keep your heart in the right place, and you'll be fine. Speaking of hearts in the right places, this conversation is it's another one that we did not want it to end. It's a long episode, but it flies by. Debbie Rochon is, forget all the movies she's been in. Like, what is it? 300,000 movies.
265.
Yeah, all
at
the movies.
This date, she probably finished 3 more.
Her story, where she comes from, and the attitude that she's kept, and everyone needs to know who this woman is and be like her. Like, she is just incredible, and we're so glad this finally happened. It was something that originally, when you start listing, like, okay, who are our friends? Who do we know? Who do we want on? But until we started doing this on Zoom, it was just never possible unless the person lived here. And then as soon as we opened it up to Zoom, we just get inundated every week from publicists and stuff, and which is great that people want to come on the show still 8 years later. And like Joe said, I agree. I think these last 15 weeks alone, there have been some just great
we've been really lucky.
So yeah, really, if anything, thank you to the guests who have been so gracious with their time for these first 415 episodes in these first 8 years, because it's obviously every episode is centered around a guest, even though it's a conversation where we're all contributing and relating. But if it weren't for the guests, we certainly wouldn't still be doing this now.
You'd be hearing more like episode 400 with us just bitching and moaning by ourselves.
And one more thing. Most important of all, and I highly suggest this for anyone starting a podcast, stand for something and have a thing. And I know that sounds pretty blanket, but for us, it's Yorkie-thon. Like, that alone is a reason to keep doing this. And we have discussed before, well, couldn't we still do Yorkie-thon once a year but not do the podcast anymore? No, because where the audience would disperse and the interest would be gone. But the fact that every year at Christmas time, we get to save a ton of dogs. And I don't mean we, me, Joe, and Arwen. I mean we, this community. It's the most wonderful feeling in the world. If you're new to the show and you haven't done a Yorkie-thon with us yet, the next one, Yorkie-thon 6, will be in December. And you'll see at the end of the weekend, and especially when Save a Yorkie Rescue sends us that book and you get to see the pictures of all the dogs that they were able to save that year, it is just incredible, and that makes it worth it. So there you go. For those of you who are part of Patreon, you're really going to love the second half of this one. I think this episode it's well over 2 hours for sure. Obviously, it's not edited yet at the point that I'm doing this, but we never cut out content. We just have to cut out little things here or there, especially with Zoom. So enjoy it. You're going to love this. If for some reason you don't know Debbie Rochon yet, you will be 100% in love with her by the end of this conversation for sure. And then you get to go seek out all 235. Is that
65?
265.
But start with
films.
the first. You know what? There's 235 that are real winners. The others kind of stink. Just being honest.
All right, this is going to air on May 17th.
They know that. It's May 17th already, you idiot. So our next guest is one of my best friends from the 90s that I'm so glad that we've been able to reconnect. She is really, Arwen? Yes, she agrees.
Yes.
She is one of the most versatile actresses in the genre with over 265 titles and counting. That's just as an actress. She's a director. She's a producer. She's a writer. Hell, she's even transcribed for Charlie Rose. Please welcome horror icon Debbie Rochon.
I want to can I say something right off the bat? Because
Sure.
you brought Charlie Rose. The funny thing was, I did that show. I transcribed that show with Ted Koppel and Charlie Rose to be, it was an anniversary program where Ted Koppel was interviewing Charlie Rose. The next morning at 9 a.m. is when it got shut down and canceled. So it was
God.
Oh my God.
Boom. I don't know. I had nothing to do with it. However, it was really funny because it was just this big love fest, which of course it would be because, it's so many years on the air. And then the very second I send it in, literally within a couple of hours, canceled.
Oh, God.
Forever.
That sounds like every big studio film I've ever booked. Like, it's always like, here we go. And then like there's a merger or someone dies or like, it's the most random thing that has nothing to do with the actual project or anything. But yeah, to have your first day and then it gets canceled. That sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you do everything that you can, as you guys know, like you do whatever, like anything having to do with anything and in the business. And that was just a one-off. And I don't know, it was just really funny to me. I was just like, well, thank God I got it in. So I still get paid because, obviously he will not be.
Well, okay. This is a great example of just your journey because there's those people that kind of from like 8 years old or whatever, they were like, I saw whatever movie and that was it. And I knew that's what I was going to do. But there's a ton of people who kind of just find their way into this. And we always try to encourage people to stay open-minded because you might say like, I'm going to be an actor and maybe you're actually better fit for something else in the business. Maybe you're a better writer, a better producer, or maybe doing something else would actually make you happier. Because we all know those people that are still struggling with something and they've never been happy for a day in their life. They're just miserable, but they don't want to quit. And so we're always trying to encourage people that it's not quitting if you try something else or if you pivot a little bit. And it's also going to make you better at the craft in general, the more different things that you try to do. But the way that you kind of just sort of almost stumbled into it, because weren't you sort of discovered as an extra?
Yeah, absolutely. I just literally heard about so a guy that I was sleeping on his couch, who was a good friend of mine. I was in Vancouver, homeless at the time, but he was the manager of Craig Russell, who was basically the Canadian Divine in the 70s. And so he said, go down to the Denman Inn Hotel. They're doing a big casting for Ladies and Gentlemen, the Fabulous Stains, which was called All Washed Up at the time.
I just watched that 2 weeks ago, and I was looking at the trivia, and I'm like, Debbie Rochon's in this fucking movie? Holy crap. Oh my God. I had no clue.
Yeah. And so, I spent 3 months and I went in there. I don't even think I had shoes on, seriously. And they said, are you willing to dye your hair? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you barely have clothes on here. Just like so poor and homeless and struggling through living on the streets and couch surfing. And luckily I did, because I got the hookup. So I spent 3 months as an extra making that movie. I got $300 cash a week, which is what was going on. That's what it was. Paramount. It was Lou Adler, Mr. Rocky Horror Picture Show, was the director. And back then that's what happened. I mean, you'd never see that now with the cash, but $300 cash a week, I was like, that was $1 million to me. So plus I had a lot of fun. I did the best I could. Like the first AD would say, you're really looking for, Ray Winston or something like that. And I really look for Ray Winston, like big time. And so he actually came over to me. It was so weird. He said, you did a really good job. That never left me. And I thought that gave me purpose. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm only, 14, whatever, 15, but it gave me something in my head. The first time I had any positive feedback from anywhere. And so it had a profound effect. And then that sort of sent me on my way.
What's so funny is that completely mirrors how I kind of started as well, because we met each other on Terra Firmer, which was literally the first thing that I did right out of film school. I was lucky enough where Yaniv, my best friend in college, basically, he got a job with Trauma as an intern, became, like everybody's favorite guy on, at the office, and they cast him in that. And he's like, dude, you got to be in this movie. And I went down, and next thing I know, I was the best boy. And then, but because I was just so excited to be on that set, like it was infectious to everyone else. Like I was just like, I'm grabbing cables that I'm not supposed to be grabbing. I'm helping out with craft service. And even on the first day, and the first day was a scene with you in it, I remember Lloyd coming over to me and was like, man, you really enjoy being here. I'm like, this is a dream come true. Like, and that little bit of encouragement kept me going, because as we all know, Trauma doesn't pay shit. They'll pay you in cheese sandwiches. That's pretty much the extent of it. But the passion that they're able to grab with, so many people, even in the lower ranks, even if you're just a PA, it really made me not just come back, but want to help in any way possible. And that's how I got a promotion from like week 1, I was a grip. Week 2, I was in the movie as clothespin boy. Week 3, I ended up directing the background actors. And by week 4, Lloyd's like, keep coming up with funny shit. You're our on-set writer now. I'm just like, but that's the sort of thing. And Adam, and I think you can agree, we've all been on sets where for example, like the PAs, they don't give a shit about being there, or if they're not directly standing next to the director going like, oh yeah, you know what, Stephen? Yeah, I think we should probably go again. No, they're like stuck doing lockdown 2 blocks away. They get pissy and they don't care about it. Whereas when you put your passion towards it, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to add they almost sabotage it because they're talking shit and creating negativity. And it's okay to drink coffee. Like if you have a moment, that's not the problem. But you know where I'm going with it. Like they just can create sort of a negative cluster.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that that's the way a lot of crew people learn how to bond with each other is through complaining. And one of my assistants, I had told him about that early on. I'm like, pay attention and watch. Like on day 1, you'll hear whoever it might be, grips or electrics, and watch. They'll just start complaining about the producers or the money or me. And sure enough, one of them said to the other one, I think this was on Hatchet 2. And one of them said, wish my dad was rich and get me a movie to direct. And my assistant was like, wait, his dad's a gym teacher and he's, he did the first one, right? That's why he's doing this one. And I'm like, you can't, it's not about that. It's just, that's how they bond. And it's like, that's where you sort of find common ground. And it's unfortunate that so many choose something negative as like an easy way to start a relationship with somebody else on the crew. But hopefully, within a few days that changes, because if it's positive at the top, it usually funnels down and everybody gets on board. But to back up a bit though, I mean, your story is just incredible, and the way that you've always remained positive about things and that tomorrow can be better. At this point, God, how many years has it been now since your surgery?
Which one? The brain surgery?
Yeah, the brain surgery.
Surgery.
The brain surgery.
Brain surgery. That's been I want to say
years?
14, 15 years now. And I had 28 rounds of radiation 3 years ago because it grew back.
Oh my God. Oh.
Yeah.
And because I had sort of just met you right before that, like I think through D when you guys were doing the Fangoria radio. There's a great story about that too. We'll get to that. But you've always remained positive, and but starting out, like, just so nobody missed it, when you first got that job on the Stains, you were homeless at that point.
Yeah.
And 14. And I just not to make you drudge up old memories like this, but I know right now there's somebody listening who, and we've mentioned this often on the show, how as far back as middle school, the guidance counselors, the teachers, they already start sort of putting you in your place. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not in the advanced classes, so you're never going to be a doctor or a lawyer or anything. You're going to be this. Like, this is where you fit. And I wish they didn't do that, because nothing is determined, especially that young. It can always change. But you're one of the greatest examples of that. So how, before you ended up on that set, what was your journey up until that point? And how were you at a place where you were homeless?
Oh, well, okay. So the short version, which is not, 3 hours long, is pretty much both of my parents were incapacitated for different reasons. My father was a very severe, very sick alcoholic. My mother had Guillain-Barré disease, so she was in the hospital a lot. So what happened was, when I was about 10 years old, I was like showing up at school, and I had like either, whatever I could find in the closet that was clean. And oftentimes it would be like all ripped up and stuff. So they were constantly taking me in to the rooms and like sewing up the clothes. So I wouldn't have to sit there sort of holding my shirt on or you know what I mean? My clothes, whatever I was wearing. Mm-hmm. And so it was finally flagged. And so they kept coming over to the house and seeing what was wrong. And it was just a complete disaster. I was facing having to go to court against my parents. And as much as I did not want to be there, and I'd rather be homeless than be at home anymore at that point, I couldn't face talking bad, no matter what had happened, about my parents in court. So instead I ran away and I started living on the streets. And sure enough, like before long, it was like, really you're doing what you can. If you're, drug running, or if you're, sleeping on the couch of the prostitutes that are working the streets, they're being kind. But back then in Vancouver in the West End, it was almost exclusively like what they would call their words, which is not PC today, I don't think, but they would just call themselves like trannies and stuff like that. They really were kind of kind. There was a couple of them that were super kind to me, and then there was a bunch that weren't, because they didn't like women. And but through the kindness, I was able to do a combination of like couch surfing, or sometimes I would be like, down on the beach, sort of like sleeping under the bushes and stuff. There was a couple of years that was like that. And then I started getting and this is a reflection of the 70s. So you have to understand how and why this happened, because truthfully, it's would never be possible to happen today. So back then, when the police would pick me up and they would charge me either I stolen something, and they would take me down, obviously arrest me, take me down and book me. I would lie about my age because I didn't want it flagged and my name, because I didn't want it flagged that I was a runaway and put back into the foster care system or halfway houses. So they totally booked me under that information, which is like weird, but that was the 70s, man. That's how it went down. It's just like throw a rock and you'll hit a serial killer. I mean, that's just the way it was. And so sort of coming through that and, going to court, like going through the whole process as though I was 18 and I wasn't. And, having a record and all this kind of stuff, which was all wiped out because, of course, years later, I would write to the actual queen and ask for a pardon because that wasn't really me and, all the information I gave. So everything was wiped away. That was just getting by. I mean, just like that. And then finally, when I ran into the casting call, that was really kind of the thing, like to speed things up, that saved my life. But within that, I mean, all the stories are pretty horrible. These aren't poor me, these are realities. And anybody out there who's lived on the streets or had any experience similar to that, they'll understand that this is not like, occasional things that happen to people. I mean, I remember one time, these couple of guys had picked up me and a friend of mine who was a young gay boy at the time. And they took us to this apartment and locked us up there and raped us for a week. I mean, that was just, and we only got out because we went on a ride with them back to town, and we were just like faking the whole thing out. And as soon as we were able at a stop light, we literally jumped out and got away. And, these are just some of the multiple things like that happened and that you go through. And so by the time you start working on a film set, going back to the positivity, and you're sort of like, wow, I mean, life could be like this. Life could be like this, like working and somebody gives a shit and, money, cash money. And it was just so amazing and blew my mind. And so that really made me realize that you could be more than, just someone who's going to end up dead or, like that.
You can be more than your circumstance.
Yeah. And that's the amazing thing though, is a lot of people would look at that and say, must be nice for these people. These people get to have life like this, but you saw a life that would be infinitely better than the life you were leading, and that's what you wanted, and then you made it happen for yourself. Where did that positivity come from, especially without an adult figure in your life who was sort of imparting that way of thinking on you? Where did you find that strength?
Yeah, and that, why that's an excellent question, because it's just sort of the core of what the whole thing was about for me. You're right. There was nobody. There was only that negativity and people trying to pull me into areas that, I refused to go. But there I did have to do other things, be it stealing or whatever the case may be, to get by, but you still had to go down a certain path and paths that you're not proud of. Like, it's not a great thing to say that, you've stole things. That's horrible. But within myself, I always had like this weird rock hard, solid will. And I always said to myself, this is not me. This is going to change. And I don't know where that came from, to be really honest with you. I just had it in my head and I didn't even know what it looked like or what it meant. But I just said to myself, I know well enough. I've been taught by these people on the street to not say anything, not share anything, not show any emotions, which was, by the way, my biggest block when I started acting classes. But That was what I was taught, to have the poker face to survive through it. And that willpower of just literally, the only way to describe it is like in forcing a square peg in a round hole. That my willpower was like that. If I had to sit there with a hammer and get that done, I would do it. So my willpower superseded fear or doubt or succumbing to anybody else, because the good thing it taught me was to trust no one. And why was that good? Because in that circumstance, you don't want to trust anybody or what they had to say, which is, you can't do anything, you're not anything, you're only worth nothing.
Yeah.
So I didn't believe anything anybody was telling me. So in that regard, it worked in my favor. So it was just a weird wheel that I had in my head with my willpower. And that's the only thing I have to attribute it to. So, and I still have it to this day. It's different now, but it's still that sort of core, I would rather sleep on the street than go home in that situation, because that was so awful. So if I'm happier under a bridge, having to wake up every 20 minutes to make sure that no one's like skulking around, sorry. But then that's what I was going to do. Like, just to have that kind of nothing's impossible sort of headspace, I guess, to simplify it.
Yeah.
But then now that's, wow, Deb, I'm sorry. I'm like, I didn't know half of this stuff. And like, it only makes me completely love and respect you all the more, because, like, as a Troma fan growing up, when Tromeo and Juliet came out, that's the first time that I'd ever seen you in anything. So when it came time for me to be on as a Troma fan, to come onto that set for Terra Firma, you were a queen, like that's how everyone kind of treated you, because the rest of that cast, if anyone's ever seen Terra Firma, is as if Lloyd took a bulldozer and went down to the Bowery and just collected every punk and miscreant and geek and weirdo that you could possibly gather and dump them all onto a set. And there were people who, were fans. There were people who were not, like a lot of people were just kind of like, hey, a movie, cool. Some people knew what Troma was, some didn't. But like you were saying before about that positivity, like I've worked with actors who have had, stared down the shit end of the stick for years, and then finally have come to a modicum of success. And instead of paying it forward with positivity, they do it in the opposite way. Like, you know what? I've been shit on all these years. Well, now I'm going to do it to everybody else, and their justification for it is, oh, I'm breaking them in, or, this is, they should have the harsh reality of what it's like to be on a film set and all the politics behind it and all the garbage and the bullshit behind it. I need to toughen them up. I've heard actors say that. And the thing that and you know what? And in a way, you could have gone down that route. Where not in a weird sense, like of entitlement, but like now this is what it's like, and I'm going to exploit it in a negative sort of sense.
But the most important thing you just said, Debbie, is that this wasn't you. This was the circumstances you were in. Yeah. And if everyone could understand that and think that way, I think they'd have a better chance.
Exactly. And the thing that I remember was, again, from the first day, every day that you were on set, there was this positive, glow, and I'm not just trying to blow sunshine up your ass, but I'll never forget it, where every time you were on set, you were so sweet to everyone. You said everybody's name. You knew my name by day 3, which I just I just kind of fainted a little bit. I'm like, oh God, she knows my name. But you know what? That's what pushed us through when we're doing 16, 17-hour days and everyone would otherwise be miserable. It's that kind of positive reinforcement that you need. I learned so much on that set, and I did, and I will give you proper props, if you will, that you were one of those people that I'll remember that when it came time for the infamous asshole time, when Lloyd's ranting and raving and saying, I'm going to fucking blow my brains out if we don't get this fucking shot. And we would almost look to you and to see how you were so professional. Cause there's a difference between we hear like, oh my God, they're so great. They're so professional. as opposed to like they are a dream to work with, because we all know it's not easy to make a movie. So when you can see it from a perspective of, like I would use this adage all the time, it's better than digging ditches. There's many jobs that are better than digging ditches, but like we should all be so lucky to be making something that isn't just a 9 to 5 where you clock in, you clock out, you do what you do. And the reach of your work only goes so far. And we're not discrediting anybody who digs ditches or is an accountant or whatever. You do impact lives in some form or another, but like when you're making a movie and knowing that these are things that are going to be seen around the world, like when Terra Firma played at Cannes Film Festival, I was like, holy shit, what the hell? Like these dumb little things that we were doing on set is now in France. Poor Yaniv is running through Times Square with his little ding dong out, and now everybody's commenting on it, but it was that kind of positive attitude that, and I remember there was a couple people who grumbled and groaned on set. Like, again, I watched it last night and all these memories, came flooding back, and every scene that you were in, I remember everyone just kind of smiling and, being thrilled that like, oh, we get to watch Debbie act, oh, she's got a big fake nose and she's not complaining. Like the amount of abuse that Lloyd puts all of us through, with the best of humor, but it's grueling at times. And, it's so hard, especially on the hours and the conditions that we're in. And, it's not, I'm going to go back to my trailer. Yeah. Most cases, your trailer is your car. And if you even got there by car. If anything, it's like, I'm going to go over by that porta potty over there and just kind of like wait until you guys are ready for me. That's the sort of thing that I think is like so necessary to have those kind of positive people on set. So anytime, like, that's why it was like, I might have fallen in love with you more on that set just because of how you were able to make, like, you push the crew forward. And that doesn't always happen, especially from actors, like you're hoping that it's going to be the director or the producers or, somebody that's above the line. But, like when you have it where your actors are the ones who are getting you up in the morning and saying like, oh God, I can't wait to see, Debbie work today, or I can't wait to see Trent, like do his thing today. It was I was so grateful for that, because it showed me what it was like to be on a set where even in its worst conditions, you can still walk away smiling. That to me was like one of the things that I learned the most from you.
No, thank you. And it's so true. And I will just add this, that every single set, and there are exceptions, and I will talk about that, but every single set to this day, when I'm there, I am so grateful to be there. Not grateful for a, putting in air quotes, job. Grateful to be working on a piece of art. Like, I'm so grateful because I have put so much thought, whether I'm successful or not, I've put so much thought into my character or what I want to do, what I want to achieve or want to try to achieve, that I'm so just jacked and focused. And as they say, the play's a thing, the movie is the thing. And I don't give two shits about anything else, including ex-actor talking about their next job. Pet peeve number one.
Oh my God, it's the worst.
Why can't your fucking head be in the moment and do a good job now? Because I'm not seeing that great of a job for you to be talking about your next one. But
they're insecure. It's an insecurity where they feel the need to make sure everyone else knows that they're better than this, whatever it is. Like, extras do that all the time, where it's like, I'm not a background actor. I'm just doing a favor for whatever, I just booked 10 pilots at NBC. Oh yeah.
No, there really isn't any shame in it, because if you really do love, and I know agents would not agree with this, I do understand that, but if you are really a film lover, then just to be on a set creating, that has to be the biggest part for you. Like, anything less is just not enough, because as you know, it's not an easy life except for the 1%ers, right?
Yep. Yeah, and everyone else is there too, making the same movie, so there's no reason to need to qualify yourself or anything. You're all there, so make it awesome and be proud of it. And this is a pet peeve of mine with anything low budget. If I don't care what your position is on it, if the money is the most important thing and you had a better option, you would have been doing that. So once you've accepted the job, you don't need to keep telling everybody what your rate usually is every day. You don't need to keep we all know your worth. And I've said it on so many sets, you're all worth, you're all priceless in my opinion, but this is the budget we have and this is what we're working. So I don't want to hear about it anymore. Plus you're only on it for a couple days. I'm on this shit for a year and a half. So just stop. And most people do get it. I don't want to make it seem like that's what everyone does, but it can be toxic because it's always easier to be negative. That's the easier way. And that's, unfortunately, I think why you end up meeting a lot of people that are like that. But
I thought it was different. I thought it was easier to be positive. And I very quickly learned, especially when you're working on sets, that is not the case. It is so much easier to bitch and moan. And then next thing you know, the drivers are bitching. And then it just starts to like go up the line all the way to the producers. And then there's just this negative, like feeling or in the air. And I hate it.
The other people around you that feed off that and can kind of keep you there. And when somebody is trying to do better, they can tend to resent that. So I'm assuming you didn't have too many like lifelong friends from your early teenage years that you're still super tight with. Maybe I'm wrong, but as you were starting to find a path and a way out and become who you are, not your circumstances, was there resistance from any of those people in your life trying to tell you not to do that, or it wouldn't work, or you're wasting your time? Did that happen at all?
Well, only a little bit, because like you said, there was nobody that I really trusted. So there was nobody I was sharing my plans with. However, I did start to do acting classes before I moved from Vancouver to New York. So the people in the class, because you have to understand how not only rough I was as an actor, like super, super rough, but I was starting from nothing, and I was starting kind of, I wouldn't say way behind, because there's many people like this would come from, good families and such, but I was so trained to be not showing and in touch with my feelings. I had so far to go, right? So it was, there was people in not just the acting class, but acting company I belonged to before I left. And they would just kind of like look at each other and roll their eyes and have that sort of attitude. They wouldn't say anything to me. But to me, it was the same thing as when I was on the street. I was sort of like, pay no mind at all, because I know what I'm doing, where I'm going. And I remember saying to this one girl, I said, it's interesting because I have all this stuff that I know at some point I'm going to be able to use. And it's just a matter of getting there. And she's sort of like, yeah. And, went on her merry way. And I think not a bash at all, but I think the biggest thing looking back that she did was maybe 2 lines on the X-Files when it was being shot there. And again, that's not a bash, because that in itself is a form of success, right?
Yeah.
But all I'm really saying is, it's never doubt anybody who is really trying and using positivity, because that's the stuff that you can't teach anybody. And so when you ask me, did anybody doubt me? Oh, absolutely. But I didn't really have like the friends telling me not to go.
Yeah. So as especially in your first few years acting, like the first time you were given a character and lines and you hadn't had formal training yet, one of the hardest things as an actor is to get out of your own way, to get out of your own head, and to allow yourself to be vulnerable and believe that you are this character, believe what they're going through. And, there's all kinds of different methods, of course, but no matter what, at some point, we all, when we've been in front of the camera, have to tap into something real in our real lives, and then use that even just as like a cornerstone to then bring out this experience that you're portraying for the story. So not having had formal training, what was that like for you when you had to turn on those things, especially having been conditioned to not feel those things, or at least not show you were feeling those things. And you now turn that on, and when they say cut or that's a wrap on the movie, you've now opened up this whole thing, and there's nobody there to kind of talk you out of that. That's the one thing they don't teach you in acting school, really, for the most
Right.
part. And
Right.
that's not part of the process, like the come down. What was that like the first time you did that, where you let yourself be so vulnerable and you opened up these real things, and then all of a sudden the lights shut off, everybody goes home, but you're still stuck there?
Okay, so with that being a really deep question, I'll sort of skip around just quickly to a couple of movies, because the first time that happened, I mean, I went into classes right away, but like I said, it took me at least, I would say, 8 years of training and theater companies and doing stage work to even begin to like break the brick wall. Um, but the first movie that I had like a real role in with lines was a movie called Band, and it was never been released. It was the last movie of Roberta Findlay before she retired. And it was a comedy, it was a punk rock thing. And so the funny thing was, I really wasn't doing anything that was out of my sphere at that point, because the character was kind of partying and doing that sort of thing. But there was a brief nude scene. And so that was the first time I ever had to do one. And the only reason it was anything was just because of my memories. And so after doing it, I remember going to the bathroom and just trying to be as quiet as I could, and like cried a bit. And not because I did that, it was sort of like what it brought up.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, well, that was all right, and got through that. But later on, I would probably have to fast forward as far as like stuff that's deep goes, because by the time I got roles that were offered that were deep, and they weren't just, exploitation or this or that, they were actual roles, and I had to tap into something. And then there wasn't that support system that you're talking about afterwards. Yeah, it was really, I remember one time, even Abducted 2, where you just had to like constantly be in this anxiety of being abducted by this guy. And even though it may be like a quote silly film, we were playing it straight, even though you would never necessarily know it watching it, but we were playing it dead straight. And that was before actually Romeo and Juliet. It was in '94. And it was literally, when we finished the film, it was like 4.5 weeks in the mountains of British Columbia. I actually flew back there to do it, which is weird. And I remember just coming back on the plane and just feeling like it took me like 2 or 3 days to get back to myself, because yeah, you don't have that support system at all. But with time, you kind of like figure it out, and you go back to your room and see, I'm not the type of person, I don't, even at conventions necessarily, which doesn't do me any favors, but it's just who I am. I sort of like do my thing, have fun doing my thing, and then go to my room and decompress and sort of deal with it like that. It's not about, oh, I'm going to my room and I'm being away. No, it's sort of like, now I just need to get my head back together.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of how I deal with it. But yeah, it is a process. And all of it's a process, and none of it is taught to you.
The convention thing, it took me a long time to even identify what was happening, but as a highly empathetic person, I can't just listen to somebody's story and you're never hearing all of it. You're just hearing what they're telling you in the minute or two that they get with you. But I can't then forget it or shake it off or, just move on. So I usually do the same thing. I go back to the room and I struggle with it because I can't like, there was a couple on the last tour I did who was thanking me for Holliston because it was something that could make them laugh after they had buried their child. And it was like, all I could hear for the rest of the night was that and feel that. And like, I just wanted to get back to my room to cry because I couldn't handle it. And it is part of all this that I think, whether it's performing or just doing an appearance and meeting other human beings. Forget if you work in the industry or not, just in life, that you do need to know how to deal with it in a healthy way, which I was never good at. I'm still not really good at. But when you make yourself vulnerable and open and you share, it attracts people who have something to say, and that's a good thing. But it got, it just sometimes it can be too much, and I wish there was like a school to go to for how to not lose that empathy, because I would never want to give it up, but how to know how to handle it better, so that I'm not trying to sort of help somebody else with their therapy and then having to go to my own therapy.
And now it's time for Hollywood Therapy. The doctors are when.
That's right. It's time for everybody's favorite part of the movie crypt. It's time for Hollywood Therapy with Dr. Arwen. This is where the three of us do the best job we possibly can, answering your more personal questions on behalf of the good doctor. We would let her answer, but woof, she's a dog. Okay, so we're going to do 2 questions this week because, we have a guest as amazing as Debbie. You'll understand when you hear what the questions are. So the first one, which is slightly easier, I suppose. This is from Lewis. Hey gang and guest, I need some advice. I'm a filmmaker and writer, and I've been making movies for around 5 or 6 years now. Before Christmas, I lost my job thanks to COVID, and I've been spending all of my time writing so that I don't lose my mind. I've written a lot, and I've become very good at creating different and original stories. My strengths as a writer is that I'm creative as fuck and have so many ideas. What I would like to do is to work in a writer's room over Skype or Zoom, like work for some production company. In my country, there is nothing. I've tried to reach out to different studios, but with no results. How do I reach out to at least a room where they bounce ideas? I know I could be of help, but it feels impossible. I took your advice and I've built a respectable pile of scripts just in case someone likes my work and asks, what else do I have? I have around 9 short films ready, working on a feature, an entire new series, 2 books, and more. I have a lot. Do I give them one of my scripts that they'll never read and I become that guy? They must see how I write before giving me a chance, but how will they ever read my work if I can't get through to them? Any advice on how to get a foot in there as a writer is like any studio all around the world. I don't know. P.S. I found another.
He's a writer.
Yes. Well, there's your first issue. No, I'm just kidding. P.S. I found another job. I found another job that gives some money at least. You guys are the best. Wash your hands and stay safe, Lewis. Okay, so the reason why I said this is like a little bit of an easier one. This is the conundrum for everybody. Whatever it is that you want to do in the industry, it's like, well, how do I get in there? And then they're like, well, get an agent or a manager and they'll have access to those people and they can put you up for those jobs. Okay, well, how do I get an agent or a manager? Well, first you have to have a job and be working for them to be interested in you. And it's this catch-22 circle of how do I break in? So this is really important for anybody listening to this. If you've listened to the show for long enough, you've probably heard me mention this book before, but there is a book. The writer's name is Skip Press, Press, like pressing something, Skip Press. And the book is called The Writer's Guide to Hollywood Directors, Producers, and Screenwriters Agents. That's the name of the book. You can find it on Amazon. It's probably like used for like $4 or something. I don't know when the last edition was. I want to say 2003, 2005. So one of the things the book touts is there's even contact information in the back of the book. And there's like a bunch of addresses and phone numbers of studios and production companies, none of which are probably still accurate at this point. But as long as you have an IMDb Pro account, you have all that information at your fingertips. Phone numbers, email addresses, all of it. It's all there. How much is IMDb Pro a month at this point?
It's like $59.99 now.
A month?
No. Get the year. It's not worth it if you get it for the month.
I'm like,
no,
I have subscriptions to all these things and I don't even know what they cost anymore.
I did that at first where I got IMDb Pro for like the monthly thing and it ended up being like a couple hundred, like it was $100 or something like that. Then I got the like $70 version. It's so worth it.
Yeah. or just, if you sign up for a month and get all the information and, whatever you're going to do with it. The point is, it's not expensive. But this book, what is great about it is it doesn't just explain what to do in terms of how to get your stuff in front of the right people, but it also explains why it works that way, because that's usually the roadblock for a lot of people. Well, this doesn't make sense. And then they're not hearing what to do because they're still trying to grapple with, well, why is it like that? And why isn't it this way or that way? People will tell you it's who you know. And then you get those people who try to go to functions and hand out business cards. It's not going to do you any good. But if you have good material, you know that your script is perfect, there's no typos in it, your structure is correct, and you have several samples that you would fall on your sword for, this book will explain who to try to get it in front of. Because, for instance, a big mistake people make is, they're a writer and they like my movies, right? So they keep trying to get me their script. I'm a writer. I have my own script. I'm not interested in it. I can't do anything for you. And then people say, well, what about Grace? When Ariscope started, yes, this was supposed to be something that didn't just produce my own movies, but other movies. Unfortunately, the industry has changed so much and budgets have become so small in the indie world. It's not worth it. Like, everyone here is not going to drop everything to not get paid anything or barely get paid at all to go work on somebody else's thing, some outside project. I'm not saying never, but it's not the goal anymore. So my point is, though, if you are a writer, you want to get your stuff in front of agents, managers, producers, and directors who don't generate their own material. So as far as a writer's room goes, those are really hard to break into.
There's a lot of politics behind that.
Tons of politics.
I mean, like, if anything, the one that, like, I've never formally been in the writer's room. I've always been invited in as the working director, like whether it's for a specific episode or for the series entirely. And I've had friends like the guy who did Everly, Yale Hannon. He started out when he came out here as a writer's assistant.
Yes,
and
which that's a hard job to land.
That's a hard job to land, but that's real. That's the one thing that I didn't know until he mentioned, like, the trials and tribulations of getting in the room. But that's your first way station in.
Yes, and we don't mean an assistant to a writer. Like, for instance, if the head writer of said show has an assistant, that's their assistant.
Yeah.
The writer's assistant, the writer's room assistant, is in the room whenever that room assembles. They're the ones typing everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's usually a big monitor
taking notes.
Everyone's looking at the screen as they're putting in each joke that is pitched or whatever it might be. Those are great ways to get in, do a good job, and hopefully become a writer eventually.
Mm-hmm. One thing I will mention, though, because having met and known a couple writers who started out as writers' assistants, the pitfall with this, and this is almost, here's a pro tip. This is almost a test. You will have to get coffee for them. You will have to run and get lunch.
Yep.
You are essentially a PA in the room. Now, you're also taking notes. You're also occasionally, like, you're asked, like, hey, what about this idea or that idea? But you're in there as a utility. And a lot of times, people are not expecting that. They think, like, even if they're a writer's assistant, like, oh, okay, so I get to sit in the table, or, no, usually you're in the background. And when someone says, like, oh, can you get this or get that? Because there is an infrastructure in that room, where people are stuck in that room and they have to come up with 10 episodes or 20 episodes of plot. And it's like, it's stress inducing, and they're usually there for 14, 15 hours a day breaking stories. So a lot of times they can't leave. And the only outside world interaction they have is the writer's assistants. Now, and some people feel insulted that they're being asked to go do these, quote unquote, menial jobs, but you have to prove yourself and that you show that you're willing to, like, exactly what Debbie and I were talking about in the beginning, like when you're on the set of a trauma movie and you show, like, how much you want to be there, or being on the Stains and you show how much passion you have towards even the smallest job. You show that you're on standby. That was the thing we always talked about on Terra Firmers. It's the crew members who are always on standby, ready to go at any moment. Those are the ones that are going to stand out. Those are the ones that are going to be like, oh, you got it right. My latte is perfect. And then they're going to keep you around. And then they're going to start asking you ideas or be open if you go, well, what if they did this?
Well, they'll ask you if you have any ideas. They know that you didn't get a writer's assistant job because you want to get coffee. They know that you want to be a writer. They know that you probably have scripts. At a certain point, if you're doing a good job with the other stuff, someone will ask you, hey, can I read something of yours? But don't sit there and keep, just like what Debbie and I were just talking about before, about the people, the extras who need to keep telling everyone they're better than this or whatever, or this isn't what they really do. They know that.
Yeah.
You don't need to tell them that. But I know the question though is, how do you get that job?
To hear the rest of this episode, go to patreon.com/themoviecrypt. For only $1 a month, you'll get every new episode every Monday downloaded right to your podcast app of choice.